I spent a season of my life in my mid-20s wrestling with this idea that contentment meant that you were settling. That if you became content, somehow it meant that you weren't driven, that you're lazy. You're just settling for what you have, and you're not working towards something else. But I came to realize that that is just a straight up lie.
Welcome to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino. Christ Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Nino. Great, thank you.
Today, I want to start us off with a testimony from one of our recent classes, but it's really going to tie to this idea of a conversation around gratitude. You know, we at New Money Habits and through this program of Christ Centered Stewardship believe that an attitude of gratitude destroys discontentment. And I had this really awesome conversation with one of our participants after a class recently about this very thing. You know, here they are taking the class. It was a gentleman and his wife, and they're learning about challenging their perspective on how they view stewarding, not just their money, but everything that God has given them in a way that brings Him honor, glory, and praise. And this guy really opened up after the class about his lack of contentment. He's like, this is something I struggle with. And his wife, was agreeable right away, that he is always chasing. I'm trying to think of some of the words he used, but I'm paraphrasing, but, always chasing and wanting the next thing. And when this thing is done, then I got to work on the next thing because I want the next thing. And so he was in a season of his life right now where it's kind of like education, because education will lead to promotion and that sort of thing. But in the meantime, there are things, tangible things that he wants to acquire, and he's in a car that he doesn't want any longer, and so he wants to replace the car, and he wants to buy a new whatever, right? And so he is just sharing all of this discontentment. And I really appreciated the fact that he was so vulnerable and open about it. It gave us an opportunity to really talk about how to combat that discontentment. And we talked about the focus needs to be gratitude. Gratitude is going to be the thing that rails against his discontentment.
That's cool. I can really relate to what you just described from that participant. It's something that I have intentionally worked on over the years of my life. But I remember to this day, graduating from high school and everybody wanting to be celebratory. And I was like, yeah, but there's college. Like I've got that next. And then when I graduated from undergrad, I had already applied for graduate school. And so everyone's like, oh, what a great accomplishment. I'm like, I've got this other thing that I'm doing. And so it wasn't so much like always wanting more, but it was definitely not being willing to just sit in the blessings and recognize that, this is a big deal. Not my accomplishment per se, but what you've been given up until this point. It was hard for me to really sit in that because there was this other thing this next pursuit that I was after. And so I really understand that piece of it for sure. But I really appreciate how you also said that he was mentioning the idea of, this car needs this and this needs that. And just, it can be very tempting to just forget about all of the blessings that we actually do have because we're looking at the things that we don't have and what we would like to see differently, et cetera, et cetera. And this is not an episode saying, just stay where you are and don't be willing to grow and all of that. It is very much the opposite of that. We're saying be content with what you have, and it's okay that, and more will come. Like when we become content, it's very interesting how that all works. It's just what what will come. And it's not always those worldly possessions that sometimes people are like, oh, that's what I really want.
Yeah. Maybe it's more peace. Maybe it's more joy in the simple things. I know that I spent a season of my life in my mid-20s wrestling with this idea that contentment meant that you were settling, right? That if you became content, somehow it meant that you weren't driven, that you're lazy, that you're just kind of, again, I'll use the word settling, but like you're just settling for what you have, and you're not working towards something else. But I came to realize that is just a straight up lie.
Yeah, it's the difference between contentment and complacement.
That is exactly right. It is the difference between just being complacent and I'm not doing anything versus truly being content. And it was in that season of life. It was before Christina and I had children. It may have even been before we were married. I'm not sure. But I remember we had this small little apartment, and we had, I'm pretty sure, one vehicle, and it wasn't anything glamorous, but it also wasn't an absolute rust bucket beater, and I just was like looking around, and I'm like, wow, I'm like really thankful for the things I have, and I don't want for something different or need something else right now. Like this is awesome. And it led to, like you said, other awesome things. I mean, if Christina and I were not married, eventually we got married, and then we had kids, and eventually we bought a house. And it wasn't that I became discontent. It was that I was content and there was growth. But I'll be the first to also admit that I wasn't able to stay in that season. So, we bought a house, and at first I was over the moon about the house. I thought it was definitely more than what we needed at the time, right? At that point, we had a 3-week-old baby, and we had a 4-bedroom house, 2,000 square feet. Like, oh, this is plenty, right? But, fast forward 5 years, 6 years, whatever it might be. Now we have 2 kids. The house seems like it's getting smaller, and feeling like, oh, we need or we want bigger or better, or, oh, this person has this in their house and our house doesn't have that, and all that stuff, right? So these things sometimes are seasonal, and you got to catch yourself when you're in a season of being kind of attacked, your contentment's being attacked, so that you can kind of get back on track and just get back to being grateful.
Yeah, and I think that is such an easy trap to fall into, especially now. I mean, I know it's always been an easy trap to fall into, but the whole keeping up with the Joneses idea, right? Well, that used to be that your Joneses were the next door neighbors. And so whatever you saw happening to your next door neighbors, like, oh, I want that, I want that. But there's still some sense of you're already in the same boat, if you will, like the same, whether it's the same income category, if you're living in that neighborhood with those neighbors, chances are you're sort of on even playing field, is what I'm getting at. Now, it's like keeping up with the Joneses is keeping up with the entire world, because you have access to seeing everything. Everybody is online. They're sharing most of their highlight reels versus the low lights, right? And so you're seeing the best of what everyone has put out there. And it's like you might be in a completely different playing field than the person that you're looking at. And yet that's what you're angsting and longing for. You're like, that's the thing that I want. And man, it can be so easy to fall into that trap. And so sometimes it's like, just just don't even look. Don't, you weren't walking over to your neighbor's house every day in the past. You were seeing what they had because you saw like what was in their backyard or the front yard or whatever. You saw their car in the driveway. Now it's like you just have to sometimes say, don't even look, because it takes away that contentment instead of jumping online and looking at what everybody else has. Maybe take a walk through your own home and start taking inventory of the things, the people, the blessings that you have been given. Take a stroll down memory lane. Like one of the things that I think I mentioned last week is that, we're going through stuff in the house to get rid of. Well, my daughter is coming home from college. She just graduated. And so she's back and she's kind of going through all of her college stuff. But in the meantime, also is starting to try to overhaul her room because she's living at home now for a little bit. And she's like, I want to be able to have space in my room. And she's not a hoarder, but she's a saver. She saves things and we've had to kind of work through some stuff. It could be even food. Like she'll make this delicious, banana muffin. And she's like, why is everybody eating the muffins? I'm like, well, what did you want them to do? I mean, if we save the muffins for too long, they will not any longer be able to be eaten. And so it's like, there's that tug and pull of, I don't want to, I don't want to use this thing. But then you end up not being able to use it for what it's intended. Anyway, I don't want to digress, but in her room, she's going through a bunch of stuff. And some of the things that she's come across are cards that she saved from graduation, cards that she saved from her first birthday. Like my mom wrote her this book. It wasn't really a book, but she wrote a whole bunch of stuff on this card. And it specifically says, I know you're one. You don't understand any of this yet, but I thought maybe I'd write you what I'm feeling right now so that when you're older, you'll be able to look back and see that, right? And so things like that, I'm glad that she saved little things like that, but now she's looking at them and she's being able to see them. And those are blessings when you can really just look back and go, oh, what was this person feeling at that time about me? And so if you've got photo albums, if you've got letters, I mean, just take some time to go through some of that. If you're going to spend the time anyway on social media, looking at other people's lives, take some time to look at your own. And I just think that might be a neat way to, like an activity, to just be able to find some of that gratitude. I'm going to throw one more idea out there. It's usually not me, the practical one, but I'm switching roles with you today.
Okay.
One of the things that we instituted in our home was a gratitude list. And it's just one of those giant Post-it note board things that you put on your wall. And it came one day out of complete frustration. My kids were being kids and they were bickering and they were being mean to each other. And just that mean spirit sometimes comes out when it comes to siblings. And one day I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't listen to you two, I think there was just two of them at the time, being this way. So I ripped up this thing and I put it up on the wall and it just said Casillas gratitude list. And I said, anytime you come to me to complain, you're going to go over there and you're going to write something on that list. And I said, and the one rule is there are no repeats. So in the beginning, it was a lot easier for them because it was like, I'm thankful for my mom, for my dad, but eventually when there was no repeats, like they had to start getting a little bit more creative, and it starts to put your mind back in that place of gratitude versus whatever you're discontent with your sibling or whatever's going on at that moment. Yeah. I'm going to pause here and ask for your feedback because I feel like I've just been talking too much.
No, not at all. I love that as a very practical way of getting into gratitude, right? Because I think that's part of what we can talk about is how do I get into gratitude? And I think we'll do that here in just a moment. But you're absolutely right. Like taking inventory of what we do have, right? It's something I don't think is practiced enough. And that starts with me. Like I don't practice that enough, but there are times where the Lord gets my attention and just reminds me. So a number of years ago, I can't believe I'm saying a number of years ago already because it's at least been two. But like 2 years ago, my buddy paid off his mortgage, completely done, right? Like, and he has no other debt outside of that. No student loans, no car loans, no credit cards, nothing. So he pays off the house, and I'm just like, I rejoice for him, and at the same time, I'm like, man, I wish I were there, right? Like, oh, I wish I was at that milestone. He did that at like a month before his 45th birthday. Like, why? Like, you're not even 45 yet, and you have no debt. That's crazy. And it started getting me a little discontent with my own situation. But then I was like, hold on. Well, I wasn't like, hold on. This is where the Spirit kind of got my attention. It was just like, reflect for just a moment. I want you to look at the things that are in your life. And it starts first and foremost with my relationship with Jesus. Like the fact that by his grace, I have been made right in his sight. Like, okay, that is something to be definitely grateful for. Right? And right behind that, he's given me an incredible marriage. And I mean, you want to talk about like doing what only God could do. My dad was married and divorced 3 times. My mother was remarried and divorced after my father. And so all I know is a wake of broken relationships, right? And as a child or, a adolescent, it was, well, I'm never going to get married. And I think that finally gave away to like, if I ever get married, I want it to be like once and that's it. And here we are. Christina and I celebrated 17 years a couple months ago. And we have such a healthy marriage. I love to use the word healthy, right? Because it's not perfect. We have squabbles and that sort of thing. But we have such a healthy marriage. We have such strong communication. I work from home. She's home all the time. We're basically attached at the hip, and we love it. Like, I'm never like, oh, I got to get away from you. She's never like, oh, I've had enough of you. Like, we love it. So grateful for such a healthy marriage. We have 2 incredible kids, right? Incredible. Again, not perfect, but amazing, compassionate, thoughtful, well-mannered, just incredible. And and that's just the first 3. So as you can see, like, as that progressed on and on and on, I'm like, okay, stop worrying about these insignificant things that the world tells me to be worried about, and instead just reflect on the absolute blessings day after day.
Yeah, amen to that. I am reminded of a personal story that I've shared before. I don't think I've shared it on this podcast yet, though. And it's when just about a year and a half ago, I was at a retreat, and there was a moment. It wasn't a religious retreat, but there was a moment when the person had asked us to go and reflect on these different timelines in our lives, where like we had to put different instances on this timeline and go reflect and see whatever. I don't remember exactly what she said because that's not what the Spirit had in mind for me in that moment, and so that I've just completely shut that piece out. But when I went to reflect, what the Spirit put on me was what was kind of going on at the time, and that was that our daughter had recently been diagnosed with autism. She was maybe 11 at the time, I think. And so we had been going through some interesting periods, but we hadn't really had an understanding of what that was. And it was just a very difficult time for us emotionally, trying to figure out how do we connect with her? How do we relate to what she's going through? And I, being her homeschool mom, it was very difficult for me to, how do I teach her now that I know some of this stuff? And I remember just being just in this worry moment of, I don't know what to do. And then it turned into frustration. And I started to give that to the Lord. And in that moment, he brought back to me instantaneously the moment right after she had been born. Well, she was about 3 weeks old. And when she was 3 weeks old, because she was premature, she was 3 weeks old, and she was in the NICU and almost died. And I remember having that realization in that moment. And I was holding her and I was just sobbing. And she was our first rainbow baby. I mentioned this I don't know when I mentioned it, but I mentioned it recently that we had 4 miscarriages. And she was our first live birth after those. And I remember just saying, Lord, don't take this baby away from us. Like, don't bring us this far, and then just rip her from us. And just sobbing. And in the moment of that retreat, Nino, when I was annoyed, when I was frustrated, when I didn't know what to do, he immediately showed that to me and said, do you remember when you asked me to keep this child? And like, I have given her to you as a gift to steward. She is my child, but I have asked you to steward and parent this child. And oh my gosh, like I was just overcome with conviction. I was overcome with gratitude. And that led to contentment, even in the imperfect situation that we continue to deal with today.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I think it dovetails really nicely. We may have stolen a little bit of our own thunder, but we have a question for the Ask the Coaches segment, which is very kind of tangible, very, like, what can I do? And it is, what can I do to become more content and stop sabotaging myself with unplanned spending? And so while this is focused on the spending part of it, I think we may revisit some of the things that we just shared about, like, what can I do to become more content?
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we did share a couple of tangible things, but with your permission, I'd like to stick with the unplanned spending for just a little bit, because that's what the question was. And part of what I'd like to ask is, like, what is the unplanned spending on? I mean, I don't know if this poster actually gave any details, but what is we don't know what the planned spending was. Maybe, I don't know the details. But we know it's more of a general question. How do I become more content? We've talked about some of the doing inventory and doing gratitude lists and, just being in prayer and asking the Spirit to show us, like, where am I not seeing this connection? But when it comes to the spending part of it, that's always very intriguing to me, because we can plan things out. There's the whole zero-based budget where you try to plan every dollar, every cent. I have a love-hate relationship with that budget type, just throwing that out there. And I think that the love part is that, it shows you a plan. It kind of gives you guidance on what you're going to do, so you don't have to question all the time. The hate, I think, is there's almost like it's not intentional, but there's an understood sense of control that we have, like, because you decide ahead of time where every dollar is going to go, and inevitably life doesn't go the way we think it's going to go. And so there's always that sense of going back and trying to fix things and rearrange things. And I think that's where the frustration part comes for me. But anyway, what is the plan in the first place? How do we get to the point where contentment allows us to plan in such a way that the unplanned spending doesn't then take over?
Yeah, I think I see this play out with a number of our clients, as there are specific clients that I've actually implemented, like, in a spontaneous category spend for them, where they fund a part of their plan is, I need to have some money set aside just to be kind of spontaneous. And so I think part of that is, when you're going to make a plan, making a realistic plan. And we kind of talked earlier about, there's a difference between, like, contentment and complacency. I think what you were describing a moment ago about, like, I just make a plan and every dollar is kind of accounted for, and this is just the plan, is I've become complacent in, this is what I just have to do to achieve the end goal, versus saying I can build in for just who I am, right? Like if I'm a spontaneous person, if I like to kind of just do something on the go, that doesn't mean I'm discontent. It just means that I need to be content with the plan that I've also made. And I think I'm just realizing this right now as we talk about it, where if the nuts are tightened too tight, if that plan is just so rigid that there's actually discontentment in the plan. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't really like this plan. This is not really the plan I want. I know it'll help me to get closer to achieving the things I want to accomplish, whether that's maybe save or eliminate debt or whatever. But if there's discontentment with the plan, I say, rework the plan. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've had to do with some of our clients, where they're like, that is not going to work for me. Like, okay, let's build a plan that is going to work for you, mm-hmm. so that you can be content with the plan. And that doesn't mean just because you have some built-in spending that you're discontent in life. You know, we're called to enjoy life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think one other thing, and again, it's just repeat because we answered all these questions before knowing the question, but it's when it says, how do I do this without self-sabotaging? I think part of that is then comparison. You know, when comparing, because comparison truly is the thief of joy. It's like, and so is expectation. Expectation and comparison, I do believe, are the true thieves of joy. And so when we have again unfettered access to everybody else's life and everybody else's plans, it's a lot easier to become discontent with the plan that was actually really good for us. And so I think if you can create a plan, just like Nino said, that you are content with, then just stick to it. Like, just not stick to the plan, but stay with that plan. Just go, this was designed for me. This other thing over here that person's doing, we don't even know what's actually going on in that person's life. We don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they're not going to share with us the bads. They're just going to share with us the goods. And so, I think that is part of it. It is, I feel like one of those old ladies who say, get off the internet, but man, get off the internet.
Amen.
I do think that is part of our issues, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So then the challenge this week for our listeners, tell me what you think of this one. I love your gratitude list and the idea that there's no repeats. So for the next 7 days, each day you wake up, you identify 3 things that you are grateful for. And in those 7 days, no repeats.
I love it. Challenge accepted, man.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.